let's get rolling. So let's start standing again today. Start with a little bit of balance work. Don't do that. So standing, feet can be just underneath the hips. Let your eyes close. And we'll just start again with some of that shifting back and forth through the feet, side to side. Just kind of connecting into where your center of gravity likes to stack on top of those feet. Noticing how your body naturally adjusts the weight with the eyes closed. And go side to side, forwards, backwards, until you can find comfortable middle ground where the weight seems equally balanced side to side, forward to back, and you can stack the rest of your body on top of that. As you find that spot, on an exhale, let yourself slowly slide down towards your toes. Take a few breaths in this fold, just letting the arms hang. Let the knees bend as much as they need to so you can get those hands to the ground. And then let the head, neck, upper back relax. And on an inhale, you're going to roll everything all the way back up to standing. You're going to let those arms reach up towards the ceiling. And then exhale them down and roll all the way down again. We'll go up and down here following your breath about 4 more times. So inhale to roll all the way up, reaching high towards the ceiling. Exhale to slide all the way down. 3 more times here. Knees can stay as bent as they need to help support you in the fold. Straightening as you reach up. Couple more. Making sure you're able to stay rooted through those feet, both up and down. Last one here, reaching high. This time stay high. Reaching up nice and tall, you can grab the left wrist with the right hand and stretch over towards the right. Staying rooted equally through both feet still, but allowing those hips to shift over to the left. On an inhale, come up, switch the hands around, and slide over towards the other side. And come back up through center, let the arms come down. Let your eyes close and just go back to that side to side. Noticing anything that's changed or shifted. A little bit of movement. And you can step those feet a bit wider. They might even go off the mat if you have a mat. We're going to slowly shift the weight into your right leg so you end up in a bit of a side lunge. Holding there for a couple breaths. And just breathing. So make sure that that hip is going back, the knee isn't crossing that toe line. We still, kind of like you're doing a squat just into that one leg. And chest can stay fairly high, so watch that you're not falling forwards. We're still fairly high and tall with the torso. Keep holding here for a few breaths. On your next inhale, you can come up, back through straight, and we'll lunge over to the other side. And same thing, you're just going to hold here, keeping a healthy angle at that knee as the hips go back, and tall with your torso. Think of trying to push your hips back towards a wall behind you. So there is a higher angle at those hips. Good. A few more breaths. Then you come up through center. We're going to do both sides once more. So shift over towards that right. Back and down with the hip. Breathing into this engagement. Starting to wake up through those legs. Up and through, and come to that other side. So shifting the hip back and down. And tall with the torso. Couple more breaths. Then you come up through center and let yourself fold towards the center with a wide leg. Now we're going to do that same motion, shifting side to side. Hands can support you a little bit. And just going back and forth, bending into one knee and then the other. Kind of shift your weight through the hips, back and down. So one knee is going to bend, hips going to go back and down. A couple more times. And then you can come up through your wide leg forward fold again. Just hang out for a few breaths. Knees can bend as much as they need to help you just relax into the fold. On an inhale, you can walk those hands a couple steps forward, so kind of like you're in a wide leg down dog, where you're still pushing the weight back and up through the hips, but just from a wider stance. Left hand's gonna plant in the middle. Right hand is gonna reach up towards the ceiling. Could also reach towards the hip. And then come down. And you're gonna switch hands and do the other side. Back and forth a couple times. This won't be as big of a rotation as you're used to from other positions. Oh, fell down. But breathe through it. Working to open the chest. A couple more times. Keeping the hips high. Once more on each side. And then you can let those hands come back through center. Walk them forward just a little bit more. Knees can bend and you can come down to a child's pose. Spend a few breaths here. Just noticing any heat that's built up in your body. We're going to move through a bit of a slower paced workout today. That's not going to make it any less challenging. Focusing on some control through our shoulders and through our hips, and through our core. And then inhale, come all the way forwards to all fours. Move through a bit of a cat stretch just to open up through that spine a little bit more before we dive into some engagements. Arching and rounding, following your breath. Exhale to round up. Inhale to drop down. Getting a sense for how those shoulder blades slide along the rib cage. A few more times. Do about 4 more here. And after you finish those 4, you can come all the way down to your belly. Hands can be about shoulder height, so the palms are planted right underneath your shoulders, kind of like your push-up distance apart with the hands. Now on an inhale, we're going to pick the shoulders up and just do a few shoulder rolls. So inhale, pick the shoulders up towards the ears. Exhale to let them come down and back and fall forwards. And just go through that a few times, rolling the shoulders up and back. The cats are having a fun game this morning. Following your breath. And you can slowly let that movement build so that over time you're picking up the chest a bit with the shoulders through that inhale and then lowering down. Driving through the hands to help lift the chest. And slowly letting that motion grow taller and taller. Lifting the chest. So think about as the chest gets taller and taller on that lift, you're not simply arching up. Think of your chest trying to move forwards as you lift. So you're still finding length through the body. It's not just about arching through the spine. We want to find some lift and a forward motion through this. So there's still engagement through the shoulders and through the back body. A couple more times. Next time you get to your tallest point, you can stay there for a full breath, using the arms to help support you as you're up. And then you can lower all the way down. Forehead can come to hands, take a few breaths. Try to fill up as much of the belly as you can with that inhale. And eventually you can find yourself stacked into a Sphinx pose. So the elbows are going to be right underneath the shoulders. Hands can be resting on the ground. So make sure you'll know if the elbows are stacked underneath the shoulders if you can relax everything and just support yourself on those arms through that stacking. If you relax and there's any tension in the shoulders or you fall forwards, adjust those elbows so they're right underneath those shoulders. There's about a 90-degree angle from your shoulder to your elbow. Once you find that, let that chest drop towards the ground. Let the head fall. Let everything sag down. Just for a breath or two. And then on an inhale, we're going to pick up the chin backwards towards the neck. So you're kind of tucking that chin, creating some double chins, and then pushing through the elbows to lift everything. Eyes are still looking down, so we're not looking forwards. We're still looking towards the ground, but you're finding some engagement in the back of the neck by tucking that chin. And then driving those elbows into the ground and imagining you're trying to drag those elbows towards the hips so the shoulders, back of the shoulders engage. Hold here for a few breaths. Feeling some engagement in the upper back, maybe through the arms, back of the neck. Then you can slowly let everything drop again. We're going to do that twice more. So on an inhale, Driving through the elbows, tucking that chin, pulling the elbows back. So we find an engagement through the upper body. Holding once we find our engagement and breathing. And then slowly lowering, letting everything drop. A couple more times through this. On an inhale, picking everything up and back. And letting everything fall down. Let's take a quick break here. So let yourself come back to head resting on forehead, or forehead resting on hands. Just give those arms a break. Take a few breaths. We're going to get ourselves into the same position, so into that Sphinx pose, stacking everything on those elbows. We're going to add a little bit to this engagement, so make sure your legs are quite close together. And you can start kind of pulling that belly, think of tucking that rib cage back, and next time you lift on an inhale through the upper body, you can also think of lifting that belly button up to find a half plank to start. So you're just lifting the torso off the ground to find that core. Pushing through those elbows still, and even still thinking of pulling those elbows back towards the hips so we have that upper body engagement. Once you find that, holding for a couple breaths, and then slowly lowering down on an exhale. We'll go through that 3 more times. On an inhale, you're picking everything up, driving through those elbows. And almost think of that upper body doing a little bit of that cat motion, where we're pushing those shoulder blades away from each other without letting them come towards the ears. Small movements. Couple breaths, and then slowly lower the belly back down. 2 more times with that. Driving through the elbows to lift through the torso. Lifting that belly up. And if you'd like to try this moving into a full plank, you can do that. Exhale, lower. 1 more time. Inhaling to pick everything up. If you'd like, straighten the legs for your full plank. Make sure the belly is still lifting, shoulders are still engaging back towards the hips, through the elbows. And slowly lower down. All the way down, forehead on hands. Couple breaths. After a couple breaths, you can push yourself all the way up through all fours, back to a child's pose, hands out in front of you. Couple breaths here. And then you can come up and through all fours. Find your nice square position in all fours. And you're going to straighten your left leg so the toes are resting on the ground behind you here. And then we're going to open up to the left side. So you're going to be rooting down through those the right hand, the right knee. And that back left foot can kind of swivel so the whole foot's resting on the ground while you're in this side angle pose. Hand can stay on your hip. And first off, make sure that you're still kind of stacking your weight evenly between hand and knee here, so we're not shifting our weight back to be all the way into the hip. We want still a fairly square angle here, so I'll show you what it looks like from the side. So you're here, and think of those hips opening towards that left side fully. So you're gonna have to drive through that back knee a little bit to help swivel the hips, maybe squeeze those butt muscles. From here, a couple options. You can stay just like this if you're feeling this work and some hip muscles in the core, or we can progress. Hand can come towards the ceiling, and or back leg can lift to hover. So if it's lifting to hover, you're keeping it in a nice even angle with the hip and feeling those hip stabilizers turn on as you open the hips and the chest. Try and maintain this for a couple of breaths. This will be challenging for some hip stabilizers, possibly the shoulder stabilizers, and the core. A couple more breaths here. As you begin to unravel this, lower that leg first if it's been lifted, and then you can slowly rotate the rest of the body down so you find all fours again. We're going to do that same motion to the other side. So straighten that right leg, or the opposite leg to what was straightened before. Root down through the left hand, left knee. Swivel the whole body open towards the right. Stay here if this is what feels good. Or you can raise that hand and raise that top leg. Finding and holding. One side will likely feel harder than the other. Think of still pushing through the ground actively. Don't become passive in your shoulder or your hip. We're still using the ground to help support us. Shoulders should still be reaching away from the ears. Couple more breaths. And then you can slowly lower that leg and unravel. We're going to do each side once more. Take a quick break in the center here. And then we'll move back to opening to the left. Straighten the left leg behind you. And then swivel open to the left. Find your balance. Arm reaches up, maybe leg reaches up or lifts. And breathing. Always opening those hips and driving through the ground. Spread those fingers out wide on that rooted hand. And the next breath or so, you can slowly unravel, and we'll find the other side. Slipping back with the leg, opening up with the body, and maybe lifting that back leg. This is all about finding your roots through the ground to help engage through the rest of the body in stability. As we ride, we don't really need to engage downwards through our hands at all. We aren't weight bearing through our hands in our sport. However, we are weight bearing through our legs and our feet. So practicing that art of driving through the ground, driving through that support system to stabilize is helpful. Slowly unraveling here. Find your child's pose for a couple breaths to grab some water. Memorizing everything that's been turned on with engagement so far. Feeling into those hips, into the core, into some of those shoulder muscles. One or two more breaths here in child's pose. then you can come up through all fours. And we'll shift forwards towards your push-up position. I recommend starting this from the knees. So we want to make sure first that your hips are engaged forwards, and then hands are screwed into the ground so the shoulders are awake. And you're going to very slowly lower yourself to the ground, but a bit different from a regular push-up. We're going to think of the elbows sticking quite close to the ribs. So this is kind of a yoga push-up or a chaturanga. So elbows are going to come back towards the rib cage and stick close to the body as you come down. And then bring yourself up in the same way. You can come through, so it's a bit of a sloppy push-up. You don't have to come up through a true push-up. You can come up through a bit of that back arch and then push yourself up back into that half plank. We're focusing on that downward control today, so spread those hands out, screw them in, and then slowly lower your body weight towards that ground, and then bring yourself back up. Let's do 6 more of those. Slowly lowering down with control, and then pushing up. Noticing if you tend to shift your weight over to one side to do this. Become aware of it. As you become aware of it, we can start correcting. Core stays strong here. Once or twice more. After your next one, come back through child's pose. Give those arms a break. Give them a shake if you need. Shake those wrists out. We'll give the wrists a break after this one. As you rest in child's pose, start tuning into that heat we're building in the arms, in the core, and the shoulders. Once again, push-ups directly aren't necessarily truly functional to us as riders. However, the skill set needed to do a good true push-up comes from the same muscle groups we need to maintain good functional posture in our riding seat. So this is why we practice these controlled movements to tune into those shoulders, tune into the core, tune into stacking our hips and shoulders and rib cage along one functional line so that we can control any movement we really need to control. When you're ready, come forwards and we'll repeat another round of at least 6 of these chaturangas or yogi push-ups. So find that half push-up position, squeeze those butt muscles, find that core, push to the ground to find the core, screw the arms in, and then lower yourself down through that close contact push-up, coming up through a bit of a sloppy push-up, and then lowering down again. Key word here is control. We're not letting yourself fall towards the ground. You're using the control and stability through your arms to control that lowering. 3 or 4 more. Coordinate your breath, so exhale the way down, inhale to come up. Last one. This time you can stay lowered, forehead to hands. Take another quick break. As you feel ready to, we're going to flip over onto one side. I'm going to start with the left on top. So we've done lots of hip abduction moves already. This one's going to be slightly different, but similar setup. So Top leg is going to make sure that hip is stacked, heel rotated towards the ceiling. Flex the back ankle, and then instead of going straight up this time, we're going to go diagonally up and back. If you think of like a skating motion, you want to push that leg out and away. Heel should still be rotated up. Once you find that, you're going to hold there. So we're just going to hold this position. Think of this top muscle working if you're not already feeling it. And then just maintaining. We're going to hold for about 10 more big deep breaths. Feeling this side of the hip start to turn on, wake up. You might also be feeling some lower leg muscles, that's okay. If you need to, you can kick further back to help turn on those glute muscles. 4 or 5 big deep breaths. Heel stays rotated up. For the next breath or so, you can slowly lower that leg down. Give it a quick rest. We're going to repeat that twice more on this side continuously. Take a couple breaths here, and then start setting up again for round 2. You're going to kick that leg up and back, diagonally, and then hold. Of course, it can be very uncomfortable to be in stillness while engaging. Good little mental practice, working through that discomfort. We like to just distract ourselves with speed, with movement, with constant change. So this can be a good exercise in mental stamina, as well as physical. For the next couple breaths, you can slowly lower that leg, top leg down. We're going to do that once more on the side, so give that hip muscle a quick break. And then set up again, heel rotated up to kick up and back diagonally, feeling that side of the hip, maybe a bit into the back of the hip too. If you're feeling like your low back is turning on with this, make sure that as you kick back, you're not arching the spine. This should be purely a hip motion. A bit of engagement through the side of the leg all the way down to the ankle is normal and okay. A few more breaths. Keep thinking of rotating that heel up towards the ceiling. That in itself will be challenging. And if you're doing this, and as you hold, you're feeling other muscle groups turn on, so things like hamstrings or quads, that's a sign that you need to take a break and do shorter bits of time with this, because your brain is kind of diverting to compensating muscle groups. So we want to make sure we're always feeling this work in the side of the hip and down the side of the leg, not anywhere else. If you're feeling it anywhere else, take a bit of a longer break, do a bit of a shorter hold for now. Lowering down through this leg, shake it out, and we'll flip over and do the other side. So setting yourself up, straight leg on top, heel rotated towards ceiling. When you're ready, kicking up and back, and holding. Breathing deeply, aim for about 10 big deep breaths. Adjust the leg as you need to as it starts to fall or the ankle rotates. For the next breath or so, you can lower down. Quick break. And then working back up again. One side will likely feel different, either harder or easier to manipulate than the other. Totally normal. A few more breaths. And then slowly lower down. One more time on this side. Picking up and back. Think of keeping that leg as straight as you can, so engagement is still going down all the way to the foot as you flex that ankle and rotate the heel. And then over the next few breaths, lower that leg down. Good work. Take a quick break, grab a sip of water. For the next few breaths, find your way towards a kneeling position. And you can stack yourself on top of that kneeling position. If you need pillow or extra blanket underneath that back knee, feel free to grab that just for a bit of padding. And as you find this position, first off, find your balance. So make sure you can root through that front foot while stacking your torso on top of that, your hips. Back toes can be tucked underneath you. Hands can be on your hips or behind your head. Behind your head is going to be slightly harder. So start maybe with this first round, hands at hips. Find a bit of a core brace so you're engaged here. Think of tucking that tailbone underneath you. From here, you're just going to lift that back knee to hover. It's not very high. And we're just going to hold up here for about 5 breaths. So engage through that back foot to help drive you forwards. Engage through that front foot to help drive you backwards. So you're staying centered over the hips. Front knee stays bent. And then we can slowly lower down. We're going to do 3 more on this side before switching sides. So collect yourself while you're down here. Tuck that tailbone, find the core. If you want an extra challenge, hands behind the head. Though if you're struggling with balance here, maybe stay here. Lifting that back knee. Both legs are working here. You should feel that back thigh and that front thigh as you balance yourself in the center. Couple more breaths. Slowly lower down. Twice more on this side for a total of 4 rounds. When you're ready, lifting back knee, just a bit to hover. The closer you keep this to the ground, the harder it's going to be. So I don't want you to lift any higher than you need to so that that front knee stays at about a 90-degree angle. If you want more challenge, hover closer to the ground while keeping that torso stacked. Adjust to your own. Couple more breaths here. And then slowly lower. One more time on this side. Collect down low. When you're ready, lift to hover. Breathe into that heat we're creating. And slowly lower. And we'll switch the legs around. Opposite knee is forwards. Take a couple breaths. You don't need to rush into this side reset everything. Stack yourself on top of that, the hips in the middle. When you feel ready, find that core, hands to hips, driving through those back toes to lift that back knee. Hovering. Don't let your back arch, tailbone stays tucked. Couple more breaths. Slowly lower. Take a couple breaths, slow down. 3 more rounds. Hovering when you're ready. Engaging through both feet, both thighs. Tailbone stays underneath you. Couple more breaths. And then slowly lower. Twice more. Lifting to hover as you're ready. Hands to hips, tucking tailbone, find that core. Couple more breaths. And lowering down. We have 1 more on this side. Almost done with the hard stuff. When you're ready, lift to that last hover. We're working on mental endurance just as much as physical today. This is that last dressage test at the end of a long show. That final stake round or jump off at the end of a long show. Those Friday classes at fair. Good, slowly lower down. All the way back to find a child's pose. A few breaths. Take some deep breaths, maybe let them out as sighs. Make your way onto your bellies. Forehead can rest on hands just for a couple more breaths. One more thing for those shoulders, for the upper back. We're going to take the arms behind you. So palms should start flat to the ground. Forehead can stay on the ground or close to. From palms on the ground, thumbs are going to rotate up towards the ceiling so that the pinky is on the ground and palms are opening to the outside. Once you find that, push those hands down towards the hips, so the shoulders are down too, and then you're going to squeeze the shoulders and lift the whole upper body up and hold. So arms are going to be coming out to the outside. Think of what a ski jumper looks like when you're in the air. That's the shape you want to be forming. Holding at the top here, breathing. Feeling the back of the arms and the shoulders engaged to hold this position. And open the chest. Couple more breaths. And then slowly lower back to the ground. A few breaths. We're gonna do this 4 more times. On an inhale, picking everything up. Thumbs towards the ceiling. Holding, eyes are still gazing gently towards the ground, not cranking up. Chin is tucked. Shoulders are engaged. Couple more breaths. And then slowly lower all the way down. Twice more with this one. On an inhale, pick everything up. Tuck that chin, squeeze those shoulders. Thumbs lift towards the ceiling. Breathe deeply. Breathe so that every inhale you get a bit of extra lift. 2 more breaths. And then slowly lower down. 1 more time through here. Thumbs come up, lifting, squeezing, breathing. These are the muscles that will work when we're riding those strong horses. They're strong in the mouth. These help you from being pulled forwards, stabilizing the arms, through the core, through the body. Couple more breaths. Last one here. Slowly lower down. Let those arms come forward. Forehead can rest on hands. Just take some deep breaths. Exhales maybe a sighs. We've done all the hard stuff for today. Reset and move into a bit of mobility to finish off. So feel free to breathe those sighs of relief. Over the next breath or two, come up through all fours. Let the knees come a bit wider than usual for this all four. And we're gonna sink the hips back through those knees. And you can move to weight bearing a bit on your forearms. We're gonna do what's called a tactical frog here. So from this wider knee flex position, you're gonna bring yourself forward through those forearms. As you do that, you're gonna bring one hip through a rotation with you. So it's gonna rotate up, or the foot's gonna rotate up into the side, and then push all the way back through the hips. Come forwards again, bring the other side with you. Just a small hip rotation, side to side. Go back and forth. Do about 8 movements to each hip. So we're stretching, mobilizing, and engaging here. Kind of the perfect trifecta. Might start with a small rotation, that's okay. Stretching through the groin, moving through the hip capsule. A few more on each side. And then you can settle in that backwards position, in that deeper frog stretch. So settle into a deeper groin stretch as the hips move back towards the heels. Let's take a few breaths there. Eventually make your way up to, if it's comfortable for you, a kneeling position or a kind of seated kneel, so hips coming to sit on top of the heels, bending through the knees. As you find this position, take your right hand and kind of sit on it, and if that's not possible, just hand behind the back is okay too. From here, take your left hand up and over, so it's just lightly on the right side of the head, and you can let that head fall over to the left, so away from that right arm that's behind your back or under your sits bones. And just take a few breaths into this neck stretch. With the hand on the head, you don't need to be actively pulling it over, just let it be a little bit of a weighted guide. A few breaths here, and then you can let that nose angle down towards the left hip, so the head is still coming over towards the left. Just for a bit of a different angle of stretch. Take a few deep breaths into this. And then you can come with the head back to center. You can take that left hand, place it on top of the right collarbone, and then let the head fall back and away from the hand on the collarbone. A few breaths. Adjusting the angle of that head so it's looking up or down, just to find a different angle of stretch that feels good for you along that front of the neck. Eventually you can come back up through center, and we'll switch the back hand around so the left hand is behind the back, or you're sitting on it, and you're going to let that head fall over to the right. So looking straight ahead at first. And then let the gaze shift towards that right hip. And then coming back up through center with the head, right hand can come to left collarbone, letting the head fall away. You're kind of trying to look over that right shoulder and let the head tilt away. You can play with different angles at that head to find a different stretch. The higher the chin goes, the more the stretch will move to the front of the neck, the jaw. Deep breaths here. Eventually come back through center, and you can shift towards lying on your back. Knees can stay bent at first. A few breaths, so just letting the knees fall side to side. Holding on one side if that feels like a good stretch for you. As you let the knees fall side to side, just settling into some deeper breaths. Filling up as much of the body as you can. If you haven't already, let the knees fall over to one side and stay there. Doesn't matter which side. Breathing into that gentle stretch through the hips, through the back, through the side of the body. Couple more breaths here. And then when you feel ready to, you can lift the hips up and over and let them fall to the opposite side. And do the same thing, breathing deeply, feeling as much of the body as you can with those inhales. Exhales, allowing you to release any tension that's holding on anywhere in the body. Check in with those shoulders, make sure they're able to fall into the support of the ground. You're not holding them up. Check in with the belly and the hips, make sure you're not squeezing those butt muscles. You're not squeezing the belly. Everything's now allowed to kind of fall towards the ground and relax. Back up through center. A couple options here. You can let the knees just stack against each other if you can come a bit wider, just so the legs are relaxed, or you can let the legs come long along the ground, whatever feels good for you. Find whatever kind of relaxed position you can and just settle into that breath. Following that same flow, so inhaling to kind of fill the body up, exhaling to let any residual tension drain into the ground. Again, checking through those thighs, making sure nothing's still engaging or holding on. And if it is, simply imagine that tension draining down, dripping down towards the mat or the ground underneath you and flowing away with the exhale. Check in through the pelvis, through the glutes, the hip flexors. Exhaling, just let anything that's still awake start to relax. And then moving up through the low back, through the belly. Feeling it all with an inhale, making the belly expand, the rib cage expand. And on the exhale, just letting it all settle. And then move upwards through the chest, through those shoulders. Breathe and make sure you can feel those shoulders resting against the ground. And if you can't, on the exhale, see if you can let them go and fall towards the ground, meeting that support of the ground underneath you. Letting that support fully hold you right now. And if your shoulders don't quite meet the ground, allow gravity to take over. As you inhale and exhale, imagine even in your mind's eye, the front of the chest that's holding those shoulders up right now, just starting to get longer and spreading out so that the shoulders are falling into gravity. Eventually move up through the neck, through the base of the skull, through the jaw. And do the same and just check in. Noting any residual tension or clenching or holding. Seeing if you can invite it to release with an exhale. Letting it fall. You can almost imagine it dripping down towards the ground. become heavy. Do the same thing up through the sides of the head, through to the forehead, the brow. Making sure there's no tension in that forehead right now. No need. Let it all fall away from the center line towards the ground, almost as if you're noticing it, feeling it drip down the sides of your head as it moves towards the ground. Letting everything unwind and relax. Spend a few breaths here as everything becomes heavy and meets the ground. Eventually take a few deeper, fuller breaths again. Eventually add some small movements, maybe tilting the pelvis back and forth, letting the knees fall side to side again, wiggling fingers and toes. Over a few breaths, rolling onto one side and making your way up again. Or you can stay as long as you'd like, lying on your backs. We'll end today's session there today. Thank you all for participating, and we will see you all on Wednesday if I don't see you tomorrow. Have a good day.